A message to the friends of the Iranian people across the Middle East.
The Middle East, the cradle of civilization, is rich with stories of great kings, prophets, and philosophers. From Cyrus to Moses to Ibn Khaldun, our nations have given the world some of its greatest visionaries. Leaders like Anwar Sadat, King Hussein, Menachem Begin, King Faisal, and my father, too, took up the mantle of seeking peace for our people. But for 45 years, too many of us have been forced to live in fear. Fear of the next terrorist attack, fear of war, fear of economic instability, fear of nuclear blackmail. That's because 45 years ago, my country was taken hostage by a radical regime that seeks not only to keep my people in chains, but to export its revolution to your countries and your people. The regime in Tehran is responsible for the deaths of hundreds of thousands of innocents, Iranians, Arabs, and Israelis, Christians, Muslims, and Jews. It facilitated the October 7th attack. It fueled sectarian conflicts in Syria, Iraq, Lebanon, and Yemen. It is trying to unseat the Hashemite kingdom and delegitimize the custodians of the two holy mosques. It uses Palestinians as human shields. And now, it has brought our cradle of civilization to the cusp of regional war. And so today, I come to you with a message. This is not the Iranian people's war. It is Ali Khamenei and his regime's war. The tyrant in Tehran couches his warmongering in Iranian nationalism. But he does not speak for our nation. The crimes his regime has committed against you, our neighbors, are an affront to Iranians and our values. For us Iranians, pride in our nation and love of our country do not come at the price of hatred, antagonism, or chauvinism. My compatriots have shown time and time again that they do not want Iran's wealth spent on fueling wars, fostering instability, or funding terrorism. Iranians are not your enemy. It is the Islamic Republic that is our common enemy, the enemy of all peace-seeking people in our regions, whatever nation they come from or whatever faith they practice. So I say to you, our friends across the Middle East, our region deserves so much better. But in order to succeed, first, this regime that has held us hostage for nearly half a century must go. The Middle East is all too familiar with turmoil and upheaval. So I know you might fear change will bring chaos, but fear not. We will not allow a power vacuum to follow the collapse of this regime. There is a vast coalition of patriotic Iranians at home and abroad ready to step in to serve our nation and make peace with our region. I have told my compatriots that I will do my duty. I will step forward at their call to oversee this peaceful transition to democracy and Iran's return to the community of nations. Peace is neither a relic of history nor a distant dream. It is a promise we owe to ourselves and our children. And together, we can make it a reality.
According to reports from the United States Department of Energy, the Islamic Republic's revenue from oil exports has significantly increased under the Biden administration. In 2020, during Donald Trump's presidency, the regime was only able to generate around $16 billion. However, from 2021 to 2023, it earned $37 billion, $54 billion, and $53 billion, respectively, from oil sales. These financial resources have been funneled to the Islamic Republic's militia and terrorist proxies, such as Hamas, Hezbollah, and Ansar Allah, supporting their terrorist attacks in the region. This financial backing is directly tied to destructive attacks on Israel, including recent Hamas attacks, sparking grave concerns about ongoing humanitarian and security crisis. The current situation reveals the ineffectiveness of the Biden-Harris administration's appeasement policies towards the Islamic Republic, as they have allowed the regime to use its oil revenues to fuel terrorism and destabilize the region. With profound sorrow, Iranian Americans for Liberty commemorates the victims of the terrorist attack perpetrated by Hamas against innocent civilians in Israel on October 7, 2023. We grieve for the immense pain and loss endured by so many. This heinous act was a calculated attempt by extremist groups to destabilize the values of freedom and peace that we all deeply cherish. Our organization extends its deepest condolences to all those affected by this tragedy. On October 10th, the forces of the Islamic Republic attacked civil rights activist and former political prisoner Javad Hosseini Nejad, along with his family, as they visited the grave of Majid Reza Rahnavard in Behesht Reza Cemetery. Hosseini Nejad and several family members were assaulted during the incident. The visit was a tribute to Rahnavard, a protester executed during Iran's 2022 to 2023 uprising. This attack highlights the ongoing repression faced by activists and families paying respects to those who lost their lives during the protests. The Supreme Court of Iran has overturned the death sentence of Mahmoud Mehrabi, one of the detainees from the National Uprising of Iran in 2022, and referred his case back to a parallel branch of the Revolutionary Court in Isfahan for review. Mehrabi was initially arrested in February 2023 in Isfahan and was temporarily released on bail from Dastgird prison in March. However, just hours after his release, he was rearrested and returned to prison. His family has faced significant pressure from security and judicial authorities for advocating and raising awareness about his situation. In June of this year, Mahmoud's sister, Maryam, along with her two young daughters, were also arrested by security forces. Kazim Alinejad Baranlu, a monarchist political prisoner detained in Evin prison, has faced punitive action for expressing his opposition to the regime. On October 6th, following his public chants of protest within the prison, authorities decided to cut off his family visitations as a disciplinary measure. This action is part of a broader effort by prison officials to suppress dissent and control the behavior of political prisoners who express defiance against the regime. Such sanctions often aim to isolate individuals and add emotional pressure by restricting contact with their loved ones. Reza Khoshgi-Nejad, a former political prisoner and brother of Hossein Khoshgi-Nejad, shared on his Instagram story that after 60 days of follow-ups, attempts, and formal requests, the prosecutor has rejected his brother Hossein's request for medical leave. Hossein Khoshgi-Nejad suffers from severe joint problems and a knee injury, which have limited his mobility. Before being imprisoned, he was scheduled for surgery in the spring, but since his imprisonment, he has not been granted the necessary permission to be sent to the hospital for this critical procedure. Waliullah Qadamian, a 67-year-old Baha'i prisoner held in Evin prison has been deprived of necessary specialized medical care. Recently, he was briefly transferred to a hospital for treatment but was sent back to prison without receiving the appropriate medical attention. A source close to Mr. Qadamian's family reported that he suffers from a lung condition and has been experiencing cold-like symptoms, fever and chills for an extended period while in prison. The prison infirmary only prescribed antibiotics despite his deteriorating health. After his condition worsened, tests revealed lung damage requiring specialized treatment. The source added that although he was eventually transferred to the hospital, delays occurred due to bureaucratic obstacles, including the failure to authorize his lung X-ray. When he finally arrived at the hospital, the absence of a specialist prevented him from being admitted, and he was returned to prison without receiving the necessary medical care despite his urgent need for specialized treatment. On Tuesday, October 8th, a group of retirees from the Social Security Organization, educators, and military personnel held a protest in Kermanshah. They were demanding action on their financial struggles and calling out the lack of government attention to their needs. The protest highlighted widespread dissatisfaction with the current economic situation, especially as these groups face increasing challenges in affording basic living expenses. On Monday, October 7th, a group of retirees from the telecommunications sector in East Azerbaijan held a protest. They were voicing their grievances over economic hardships and accusing officials of breaking promises related to their financial concerns. The protests underscored their frustration with the lack of resolution to their pressing issues. On Monday, October 7th, employees from Pars Oil and Gas Company Site 1 and the South Pars Gas Complex in Asaluwe held a protest and march in response to unresolved issues concerning their working conditions and financial grievances. This protest, part of a series of labor demonstrations, was aimed at pressuring authorities to honor their commitments, as workers have long voiced concerns over low wages, delayed payments, and inadequate benefits. The protests highlight the growing discontent among oil and gas sector employees who play a vital role in Iran's economy but face significant livelihood challenges. Raising a child in accordance with the teachings of Allah.